So the game's been trying to get Eminem's attention for a while now, and he might actually have it because on his next album or latest album, Drillmatic, he has a track titled "The Black Slim Shady." And if you, for some reason, just didn't manage to get a listen to it before the album came out, this is essentially a 10-minute diss track, which honestly feels more like a love song. It's a little complicated, so let's get into it. This was originally going to be a breakdown or lyrical breakdown, but I don't think anyone wants to sit through an hour and a half of me trying to understand where the game's coming from. So the track itself starts off with an interlude from this Uber driver who's calling his grandma saying like, "Hey, I'm still out here making my runs. I'll be home soon. I just got one more pickup and it's kind of close to 8 Mile." Cool. If you haven't been following the game and Eminem's, the game trying to get Eminem's attention and Eminem not responding, you may think that, oh, Eminem's going to be on this track. That is not the case. And right away, we get a bunch of references. The shady, it's a G-Unit reference, but also the way that Eminem would say shady. And then on the chorus, he says, "Hi, I'm the Black Slim Shady." Direct reference to my name is. With the first two verses, there's really not a whole lot that he goes into, like trying to poke at Eminem. It's honestly, it starts off with him just being braggadocious, talking his shit, and he's like calling out people, like, or not calling out people, but name dropping people like he normally does. He name drops Frank Ocean, he name drops Sweetie. He then, the only two things that come up that may be even somewhat related to Eminem is the crosshairs on my enemies line because of Killshot, the MGK diss. But then for sure, one of the last lines where he says, "It's the GA fricka fricka M, paint my face, I'm him." So essentially what he's saying, and what we get through the rest of this track, is if you were to paint the game in white face, if that's even a term or a real term, he would just be Eminem. So the game is taking on this persona of the Black Slim Shady, which we can assume, and we hear throughout the rest of this track, is more of pulling from Eminem's old sound. So Eminem's sound on the Slim Shady and Marshall Mathers LP. The over like hyper violent sound that everyone loves Eminem for. And it doesn't start out too crazy. I mean, in the first verse, he doesn't say anything insane other than, talking about his dick. And then in the second verse, this is where we get a little bit more into it. The first line he says is, "I killed Dr. Dre in my basement last night," which is, again, a direct Eminem reference to the real Slim Shady, where he says, "Dr. Dre's dead, he's in my basement." He then continues on talking about how he's out hanging out at Drake's house, and this is where he's staking out. He mentions Stanley grass, which could be a reference to Stan. I'm not 100% sure about that. But, these first two verses really just feel like a build-up. Don't know that it was absolutely necessary. Probably could have been condensed into one verse and maybe save us like 2 minutes of a song. But it may make more sense if we get a video. After that second verse, we get a second interlude of sorts, or a skit, which includes the man from the Uber driver, or the Uber driver from earlier. So he picks up the game, and the game's going 8 Mile. The game complements his starter hat, which, if you hear starter hat, you may know where it's coming from or where it's going. This starter hat is the same one that Eminem signed and sent to Stan. This was obviously too late at that point because Stan in the song had already driven off of a bridge, but it was a reference to that. So the game starts asking about the cap. He's like, "Yo, it's hard as fuck." He's like, "Yo, there's a crazy story about it. This is like my brother. He gave me this hat 22 years ago." And the game asks to see it. It's like, "Oh shit, it's autographed?" It's like, "Who signed it?" And the brother says, "Eminem." And he starts to explain who Eminem to the game is, which is actually kind of crazy because I feel like most people know who Eminem is. But he's like, "Yeah, he used to be like this rap god. Me and my brother praised him back when I was little, and I don't really like any of his new stuff." And I think that's something that a lot of people feel. Like most Eminem fans, I think at this point, don't like any of his new stuff. They really don't care. I mean, personally, Kamikaze and Music to Be Murdered By were okay. Relapse, I enjoyed, but everything in between, not for me. Not enjoyable, and I think that kind of goes for most people. Then after that, he realizes, like, oh, wait, they're going to go get Eminem. They're going to Eminem's house, allegedly. And then we get into the third verse. And this is where we get way into it, because the third and fourth verse are dummy long, but he pulls in way more references, and this is actually where he's going at Eminem in. So near the beginning of the verse on this, he pulls the rhyme scheme from Lose Yourself. He goes, oh, so he goes platinum, and oh, I'm on the math with him. He got all the blackest friends. He wants to be African. He starts talking about how Eminem was maybe appropriating the culture. Back in the day, maybe, sure. I mean, based on his appearances, but nowadays, not as much. I can understand where he's coming from, though. I'm not going to say how I feel about it either way. I really don't care about Eminem anymore. But he then talks about how he was left for dead on Doctor's Advocate, which, in my understanding, he purposely left Interscope or Aftermath so that he can put out this album so that he could prove to others that he didn't need Dr. Dre. But I guess, I mean, whatever. He just keeps going, though. He then talks about how Eminem was depressed, and he's just masking it with Adderall and Vicodin and aspirin, like, which, that's something that people do. I totally get it. I understand. It's not the healthiest way, but it is some people's outlet. And then he says, but the math wasn't mathin' in. The math was not mathin'. Then one of the next lines, which also is another dig at Eminem, is, I'm just going to do the short bit, to see that I was in the white Rolls Royce with 5 nines when you was pretending to be the white Royce to 5'9". I could see that too, because some people may not know who Eminem was back in the day, and they're like, yo, you just rapping with Royce? You just trying to be like him. And now that I think about it, their earlier work may have sounded similar because Royce was low-key kind of corny then. Now he's better for sure, but I mean, sure, whatever. Then he goes on to talk about how the biggest rapper in Detroit is Sean Don, Big Sean. That's very arguable, but sure, whatever you want to say. And then he goes on, like, shortly after that line, saying, I never heard you in the club, I never heard you in a bar. 11 albums and 10 never got played inside my car. I don't know which 10 he didn't listen to, but, 11 albums and 10 of them he never played inside his car, which I find incredibly hard to believe given how many references he's making throughout this song. But sure, whatever. I mean, you could listen to the album anywhere else. You don't need to listen to it in the car. But he's basically trying to make the point that no one goes outside and listen to Eminem. Like, that's kind of like a weird rap fan thing, I guess. Like, you're never going to see someone driving around listening to Eminem. You're never going to hear it in a club. You're never going to hear him in a bar. But to be fair, I don't think that's what Eminem was trying to do. I don't think he was trying to be in clubs and bars, but, whatever. The one bar where I feel like Eminem will actually respond, and the reason I feel like he will probably respond is because he says, Dear Slim, Haley's with me, and she's unharmed for now. Eminem is very protective. If the second you mention Haley, you've got his attention, I think. I think he's probably going to say something. Will it be a 10-minute response? Probably not. But it would be very funny if it was. Then he kind of goes on to talk about how he's cold and sick as all these viruses and stuff. And then near the end, he said, or end of that verse, he says, you are not top 5 in mine, Big or Pac eyes. No Andre, no Nas, telling white lies, or stop telling white lies, sniff a white line, this is the right time. I should not Vanilla Ice, I'm not Mr. Nice Guy. So he has a nice guy reference, but also this feels like a reference to when Eminem would list off his top 5. But he's also saying, like, you are not in my top 5 rappers of all time, which is very funny because shortly after this track was leaked or dropped, however you want to say it, people screenshotted his top 10 rappers alive, and Eminem was number 4. That was just last year, so don't know what happened. I don't know if he's lying. I think he's just fucking around. He's just trying to get Eminem's attention. We then get to the bridge, which goes, I'm crazy, which is, I believe, a reference to Stir Crazy. And then the fourth and last verse, where honestly, I don't know if he goes as hard in as the third, but he talks about how it's like, yo, you pissed off Jimmy, Universal, and Interscope, and just know I got Jimmy, Slim, 50, and Universal in a scope. You've pissed all these people off. They're in my sights. Kill shot reference, but also Interscope in a scope. He's shadier than him and crazier than Kim. That's okay. Sure, you can say that. Then he goes on to make some Batman references, which, sure, I feel like it's just kind of filler. But then he says, do you, well, riddle me this, you love your mother? Which, if you've listened to Eminem in the past, you know that their relationship's strained, to say the least. And then he makes a cleaning out your closet reference, or my closet. He talks about how people would rather bump Snoop, but then he says, I'm a lyrical 50 cal, which to me also sounds like another kill shot reference, but also a 50 Cent diss. He's like, I'm a lyrical 50, basically saying that 50 Cent isn't lyrical, which, sure, whatever you want to say, but sure, get your shit off, my guy. But also kill shot reference because 50 cal is a sniper scopes, kill shot. Then hello, paging Dr. Dre. That's another reference. I don't remember what song it's from now, but it is another Eminem reference and Dr. Dre reference. And then he goes on to talk about how Dr. Dre doesn't have a lot to say, but Curtis do, 50 Cent do. So he's like, yo, just give him to write some rhymes for you, which is a diss at Dr. Dre, but also, I mean, everyone knows that Dr. Dre doesn't write his own lyrics. He just kind of has people write for him, and it's very obvious. He then goes on to talk about how Mariah wasn't picking him, and these cannons is blamming it. Like, he's talking about how Nick Cannon and Mariah were together, and Eminem, it seems like he's not over it because he keeps referencing it. And then he talks about later on how he used to wear a bandana, and he wished he was Santana or Cam back in them 10Js, like the Jordan 10s. And he had a do-rag on for 10 years and never had one wave. So this is kind of where we're like, okay, well, yeah, he was kind of doing some cultural appropriation to an extent. Is it appropriate? Probably not. But we let him do it. Oh, man. And then there's another Mom Spaghetti reference. And then he says, this your dad was 22 when he ate Little Debbie. He takes the cake because she was only 15. He's talking about his mom's. I don't know if Eminem's going to be upset about that or not. I feel like he might, because, you know, he goes on to say, like, yo, how could you not sympathize with her having you as a teen? Like, she had to lose herself in the moment. Another lose herself reference, but give up her dreams. And like, she gave up all these things. We're trying to sympathize with her right now. But she gave up all these things only for her son to be Eminem. Like, in early days Eminem, more so. He then goes on to make another Stan reference. Let's get this shit together. Picture was ripped, I fixed it. But none with me, you, and 50. Let's stitch this shit all together. So kind of like in the Stan video where Stan like covered up his girlfriend's face, I believe, with Eminem's picture instead. He continues on and says, yeah, you know Matthew, Stan's brother, he's dead now. It's just you and me. There's no one between us. Matthew was the only person stopping them, I guess. I mean, to an extent, sure. And now he just starts talking about how what Eminem wears currently might be cultural appropriation. It's like the sweatpants the dad had, do-rag, and no jewelry. Is that cultural appropriation? Ask Paul if it isn't appropriate for me to make that statement. Rude of me. And then he goes on to he's just talking to Eminem. He's like, how was your day? Did you re-dye your beard? Did you get another facelift? Did you do more drugs? Like, he's just going in, but like, think about it. Did he need to did he need to spend 8 minutes doing everything else to get to this point? Probably not. And then I think him saying, I press everything like a weight bench, and every time the plate hits you off another playlist, is a reference to Till I Collapse, because so many people put that in their gym playlist. He also shouts out or thanks MGK, UGK, Tech 9, and Uzi Spray. I'm trying to find what relates all these people together other than Eminem, but I don't know. And then he's like, my other 12 personalities were not really in the mood today. So did he pull personalities from these people? maybe, possibly, I can't tell. And then he says, "Hi kids, here's something funny. Let's all say the N-word once." Like, which is again another reference to, "Hi kids, do you like violence?" sort of thing. And then the song ends with an outro. "Mr. Shady, don't be shady. Pick up the pen, don't be lazy. Call up Dre and get that Dre beat. Jump off stage if shit get crazy. Mr. Shady, don't be shady." And then he reads it. Overall, this was a very interesting track, to say the least. At first, because I've listened to it maybe 3 full times, it's a very long song. That's too much time out of my day to be worried about what's going on between the game and Eminem, to be completely honest. But at first, I thought it was okay. Then the second time I listened to it, I was like, okay, no, this is actually really good. And now I feel like it's a bit unnecessary. It's like, I get where he's coming from and I get what he's trying to do, but I don't necessarily want it per se. Like that's not what I wanted. Honestly, if this track was like 3 minutes long and had everything condensed into 3 verses, it'd probably be great. Having the interlude skit made a lot of sense though. It kind of tied everything together. And if there is a video for this, I'm sure it'll make way more sense. But I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to say. Like, all that he really got off was, "I don't like the new Eminem. You were trying to be black. And then I'm just going to make fun of you now." Like, I don't, yeah. But to be fair, that's what most disses are at the end of the day. So, you know, he did get a little bit personal. I will say that. I mean, bringing Haley into it, yeah, that's always an immediate, like, okay, Eminem's going to say something. But then him talking about his mom's, that's iffy. I don't know if that's going to be something that Eminem's going to really come out and talk about, or be like, "Hey, man, you can't say that." But it's interesting. Aside from that, the track overall was pretty solid. I mean, I could just kind of zone out for 10 minutes and listen to it. It's an enjoyable production, enjoyable verses. It flows well. I just don't know if Eminem's going to respond. Will he? Maybe. Probably not. But we just got to wait and see. But that's where I'm going to end it for now, because this is damn near 20 minutes and I wanted to keep it short. If you are at all interested in a lyric breakdown for it with more references, let me know. But just know that if I do it, it's going to be nearly 2 hours long, and you know, you gotta prepare yourself for it. With all that said, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this track. I know it is very polarizing. I know a lot of people are really they don't like it at all, and then a lot of people love it. Personally, I really appreciate it, because at the end of the day, he's doing a lot of what Eminem would do normally, or like what he used to do back in the day. He would bring that sound in. He essentially, this is like one of the best satires of Eminem. Like, you know, we have all these artists like who are inspired by Eminem, and to the point where they take his flow and everything, but even they haven't gotten to the point where this honestly does sound like an Eminem track. If this was like, if it wasn't the game, if it wasn't his voice, and it was like, if you put on an accent, it honestly, I would have thought it was Eminem, because a lot of these lyrics, like, it sounds like something that Eminem would do back in the day. Obviously, he wouldn't direct it at himself, but I mean, he could. He is self-aware enough to do stuff like that. But yeah. Anyways, I'll stop there. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this track. Let me also know if you think Eminem's going to respond. It's really up in the air. While you're down there, like and subscribe if you want to see more random ramblings like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.